let's talk about the scenes of you at the Stones for a moment. I spoke with Ron Moore the other day, and he was talking about the actual shooting of those scenes, but particularly for the first episode. And he said something eerily wonderful happened during the shooting of the first scene. And he said there's the scene where all of a sudden there's a close-up of you and the wind picks up Claire's hair. And he said we didn't plan on that. He said it was just this theatrical, wonderful thing that happened. I would love to know your picks for the year for scenes that were just that you didn't know were. For example, he also mentioned the wedding ring scene when it just twirls and twirls along the floor and suddenly stops in that perfect place and doesn't fall between the cracks. He said that wasn't planned. That was just in the moment, and it's just of all the ways it could land, it landed that way. What other scenes from this year were just not planned, but just you found them in the moment and you went, wow, this is going to work?
Well, I think, that scene that Ron was talking about when we first were up with the Stones, and it's when Claire, when she goes to pick the flower. I mean, that place anyway, it is very magical. I mean, I think, there's some kind of an ancient site at that location. Obviously we've put our stones there and everything, but there's a magical quality, and every time we go up there, you just feel it. You feel it in you. There's just something incredible, and every time I film there, I just feel very aware of something ancient in the air or something. But I think other scenes like that. I mean, the last scene in the show when we were on the boat. I mean, that was one of those days where there was a lot of things going on. There's always these moving parts. But when they started doing the helicopter shots, I mean, it was just like the wind was going in the perfect direction, and Sam and I were sort of on this boat and the helicopter's flying off, and you just feel, I don't know, it just feels very majestic. And it's such a pleasure to be in scenes like that, because you just feel that you're part of something really huge and great, and yeah, it just feels very special.
There's a podcast I listened to online with Terry, your costumer, and Ron talking, and I think I'm getting the details of this right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your first wedding to Frank, in the scene where you go back in time and you're in front of the solicitor's office, whatever it is, the judge's office, and did I understand her right that they tried to reproduce the outfit that you're wearing was a replication of what your own grandmother wore at her own wedding during the war, something like that, right?
Yeah, well, my grandmother, she was a nurse during the Second World War, and she was stationed in Southampton, and she passed away early in production. But when I got the job, and when I was sort of doing my research and all these nurses, she was very much sort of part of my connection to Claire. And I'd spoken to her on the phone, and I'd spoken with my mum a lot about her experiences and her time then. So when it came to the wedding, I'd taken a photo of my grandmother and my grandfather to Terry, and I'd said, look, this is my grandmother at the time. And, I think it's a few years after Claire and Frank's wedding would have been, but it was it was very much in that period. And I said, I'd love to incorporate some of this in if we could. And Terry's like, oh my God, I'd love to do that. So it's not an exact replica, but it definitely has, similarities. And Terry took it and thought about it when she was designing the outfit. And I brought it to the costume, or to the hair and makeup people as well. And, so we tried to do little odes to my grandmother, because I feel like she was kind of that personal, emotional connection to Claire in a sense, because she's a woman that I knew very well of that time, and she has that kind of character that I drew from a lot. So yeah, it was a nice thing to be able to do.
Oh, there've got to be other stories like that. Come on, think of it. What would the viewers, the fans viewing this show would love to know that are just little winks from you guys out to something else that's significant and cool?
Well, I mean, I have lots of little coincidences. These are silly little things, but when you first get a script, I always look for things that I don't know, you know, have some sort of connection to your life. And when you get something that has a lot of things in there that you recognize, then you know, you always think, oh, this could be something good. And you know, I had an ex-boyfriend called Jamie, and I gave him a cat that was called Frank, and that was right before, you know, that was before I ever got this job. So you know, I have a Jamie and Frank in my life, so it's always quite funny. But on set and things like, I don't know, it's, you know, there's so many things that it's one of those productions that everyone, I don't know, there's a great alchemy on set, and there's great things, you know, that happen, but it's one of those things you can never really think of specific moments.
I could think of one. Ron talks about that you sang a lot during the non-shooting things, and he said it was so charming they had to fit it into the actual show. Talk about that.
I wouldn't call it charming. Oh, I mean, you know, I think it's a stress reliever for me. I didn't even notice that I did it so much until they started talking about it. But yeah, I mean, you know, there's a lot of time in between, you know, camera turning around or they're fixing the lighting where, you know, you don't have enough time to go off and read your book, or you don't have enough time to kind of leave the premises, but you've nothing else to do. And I think just to keep my mind sort of clear and whatever, I tend to sing, and I never know the lyrics to anything. So I make up my own lyrics. I sing out of tune. But Matt Roberts was like, I'm gonna make you sing one day. And I was like, no, you're not. So there was a lot of toing and froing about that. And then one day he was like, no, I've written it in, you're gonna be singing. And much to my mortification, they made me do it. But it was fun.
Oh, it was a lot of fun to watch too, especially the fact that they picked the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy guy of all the songs.
Could you have picked any harder of a song? Thank you, guys.
You know,